Hello, everybody, and welcome to the China Manufacturing Decoded podcast. This is episode 107. And today we are talking about the garments and, let's say, textile products in general, and the development of new styles of garments. And I have someone with me who is an expert on that topic today. This is Belinda Jacobs from TechPacks Co. How are you, Belinda?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Great, yes, great. And this is an interesting topic that we have not covered on the podcast yet. We talked at length about the development and new product introduction process for electronic products and more electromechanical products in general, let's say, but not about garment, apparel, soft goods in general.
Great.
Belinda, your company is called TechPacks Co. And so your work is at the center of the development of new garments, right? Of new styles. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do in TechPacks Co?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to work in the UK in the fashion industry for several years as a designer.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a whole design team. We'd draw sketches and we'd send them to our overseas manufacturer to have the products actually cut and sewn and put together.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd always have so many problems in development, miscommunications, samples just not being made as we wanted them to. And unfortunately, that would even flow down into production, and we would still, from time to time have problems, even when stuff was on the shelf in store, things were being spotted. And this is when I worked for, a big company, and we'd work with big factories that were also, really great. So I started working on improving the systems that we used around TechPacks. And TechPacks are a tool that's used in the fashion industry to kind of create a blueprint and a specification to explain your product to your factory. So yeah, fast forward several years, I started my own company in 2016, and we just focus on helping brands with development and really speeding up and making that development process easier with our own sort of methodology for doing TechPacks.
Right. And TechPacks, if maybe people are listening and are not familiar with that term, it's the way I would explain it is simply the specification sheet for a garment styles, but it's more than a specification sheet. It actually guides the manufacturer and the people doing, making samples and so on what exactly goes where, like what fabric, what types of stitchings, how to dye this and this and this element. I mean, where this button has to be and how it has to look and so on. It's really a great guide for making the garment the right way. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a blueprint with specifications and drawings and materials, all rolled into one, so that you end up with this kind of like master guide, Bible type of document. And everybody who's involved with production can see, the same kind of source of truth with all of the information.
Right. And there's also, what measurement points are important with a standard value and a tolerance, for every size, and that's a big job, right, for the fit technicians to work on that.
Yeah, just that one section of the tech pack where you have all the measurement specs and all the tolerances. I mean, just that section is kind of its own science in itself. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So since you help companies develop this document, it's something that you would start typically very early in the process, right? And then people keep working on it keep adjusting it and adding some details and some notes and some comments all the way through to start of production, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's not necessarily just sort of a one and done process. It's typical to
Yeah.
come back to the started tech pack later, when you're further down in the development process and, add to it or make changes or, you need to keep it up to date as development progresses. So, as we said before, everyone in the supply chain is using this as their kind of source of truth. So you want to make sure everyone's on the same page with any updates, basically.
Right.
As you go.
Yeah. Okay. So let's cover the development process for a new style of garment, because a lot of people, I'm sure you've been in contact with a lot of people who are just starting to design their new a new style, and they think, oh well, I just work with a supplier somewhere in Asia, and if they have good communication and they know what they're doing, to which I respond, wait a minute, no, you have to know, the approval gates that you will force them to follow. You have to tell them this is the process, because let's say I'm going to switch to, let's say I'm a manufacturer somewhere in China or in Vietnam or in India, and I'm making garments. I'm cutting and sewing and packing and shipping, and I have some clients, and my major clients, they have that process in place. So they tell me, okay, you need to do this, and then after that you need to do that, etc. and so on. And then suddenly I have one customer, and this customer is like, they don't really know what they're doing. I can see it right away, and they tell me what they want. Okay, fine. And I'm going to go as fast as possible to mass production anyway. So if they don't tell me, you got to send me that exactly this before we get to that next step, then I will jump directly to the next step, right? Because all my other customers tell me you have to do this and then you have to do that. This guy doesn't tell me I have to do this, so I go directly to do that. Does that sound right? Have you seen that tendency?
I think maybe if you're new to apparel manufacturing, you don't necessarily appreciate that there's a system to product development, and maybe just getting a tech pack on its own isn't enough. You need to actually know how to follow up on that, and use it and ask for the right sample types in development to progress from having the tech pack done to actual production. Like you say, there are necessary approval steps in between. And I think it's just, if you are new to this whole process, you might sort of think, oh, well, I've had a tech pack done now, so great, I'll just send it to them and put my feet up. But yeah, in reality, it's not quite simple.
Yeah. So let's cover these steps. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go step by step with what I've observed, and then you can correct me. You can tell me maybe it's not enough, or maybe it's too much, or I'm missing something.
Sure.
So
yeah,
the first one, obviously, somebody's got to say, we want that kind of garment. The style is going to be like this. This is a drawing. This is a sketch. This is something. It's going to be that color, right? And the more, how to say, sophisticated designers will maybe already have picked the kind of accessories and lace and et cetera, and they might already at that time have started to put this in a preliminary tech pack. Is this the way it starts usually?
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. You would start off with some kind of design. Probably it might be rough at that stage for some people, and like you say, maybe the more sophisticated brand would already have things written down and like the start of a tech pack in place.
Right. And of course some companies will start with a sample from a brand, and they say, well, this is nice, let's just do it 95% the same way with a cheaper fabric and this and that, right? That also happens, but this is a bit dangerous for themselves, not even considering the intellectual property topic, which obviously is a real topic. But when they start from a sample, what I've observed is that they tend not to document what they want. They just say, here's a sample, you do everything based on the sample. And they don't go through the exercise, the discipline of putting together a tech pack. And this is dangerous. Would you agree?
Yeah, for so many reasons. Yeah. I mean, anything could happen to that sample. It could, get lost. You're sending it to the other side of the world. So many different people work at that factory who are going to be involved with your product, and only sending them one, it's not even enough, really. You really want multiple copies, and yeah, again, if anything happens to that sample, you're in big trouble, and then you're not doing any development. You're just duping something else on the market without making any improvements, which can have lots of knock-on effects as well. But yeah, definitely from the production point of view of there only being one, it's kind of dangerous.
Yes. Now then, suppliers got to be given some basic information. What's the market? Because the sizing is different, right? Let's say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sizing for France, for Germany, for UK, for USA, or for China or Thailand. I mean, it's actually quite different, right?
Yep.
Not just the way to write the sizes, but the same, I don't know, medium size, for example, will be quite different. So they get to know and have a basis for that. And this is something that the fit technicians will typically there's I don't know, different companies. We have a number of clients in Canada and the US. Usually they call that the fit technicians. In France, they call them the modelists that model the sizing of the garment. What do you call these people?
Yeah, you could use any of those, or in the US, people also say a tech designer. In the UK, people say a garment technologist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what comes first? Do you first start to work on the sizing, or do you first get the manufacturer to make an initial sample with some fabrics? I guess the latter comes. The latter comes first, right? First, you would ask for a sample just for the look. Is that the way it would start usually?
I mean, it can be different depending on the company and how they work with a factory. So as you're explaining it is typically how bigger companies do it. When they have an established relationship with a factory, they can do that. But for most of our clients, they don't necessarily have that set up yet. So when they work with us, they're more so looking for us to start from scratch and work on creating a tech pack and building out some specifications from scratch before they actually start speaking with their factory about this particular product, or perhaps they may not have even got a manufacturer yet and they're going to be using the tech pack for actual sourcing as well. So we sort of end up starting back a step before that as well.
Right. Okay. Then let's say you have prepared some preliminary, let's say a plan, right? Then typically when the importer is going to ask the manufacturer to prepare some elements, what does that include? It might include one sample, maybe an exact fabric and available colors, but then does it also come with fabric swatches and things like that? What would the buyer or the designer usually ask the manufacturer toward the beginning?
Yeah, so there are lots of different types of samples that you request. First of all, you could potentially ask for samples of your fabrics, just swatches to approve first before they actually start cutting and sewing anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to. And then once you get to the actual sample making and sewing, you could start off by asking for a fit sample, which is a sample that just shows the fit of your product, and it may not necessarily be in the exact materials that you're using, and it might not have the exact, correct trims, and it might not have the correct kind of decorations applied to it. It's just something that's in the fabric or a very similar fabric that allows you to see the shape and the fit, and allows you to try your sample onto a fit model and see if you need to actually make any changes to the measurements before you get too deep into kind of, dyeing the fabric the right color, or, sourcing all the right trims and things like that.
Right. So you typically, the designer tries to avoid giving too much work to the manufacturer at the beginning, but they need to have an idea, what is it going to look like if I tell them to use this fabric and this accessory, etc. And can I do a preliminary validation that the fit is okay for the medium size at this point, with hopefully the exact fabric, but maybe a slightly different fabric. Now, when it goes into knit garments, I guess it becomes much more important to use the exact same fabric. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really surprising how much just slight changes in fabric can affect the way that a garment actually fits when somebody's wearing it. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. When it comes to colors, that's an enormous topic, right? In itself. How do designers communicate their ideas to the manufacturers, and then how do manufacturers then submit something?
Yes, so there is a color system out there. It's by a company called Pantone, and they have these huge reference books that have thousands of colors in, and they standardize all the books so that, two different people on the other sides of the world, they can have the same books, and you can say to them, I want color, 1025, or whatever the reference number is. And then everybody who has the books can see exactly what that color is. And they've got a recipe to actually create dye for fabrics to make that exact color.
Right. So this is how the designers, they use the good old TPX books from Pantone, and they say, I want this code for this, and maybe that other code for that part of the garment. And okay, now how does the manufacturer submit something? Because it always looks a bit different on the exact fabric, right?
Yes. Yeah. So you would ask your manufacturer to create what's called a lab dip for you. So that is when they just do like a test run, dye some of your fabric, and then they send you a small kind of cutout swatch of it physically in the mail. And then you can get that, take a look at it, and double check that it matches exactly to the original Pantone book reference. Because like you say, they're having to kind of make this dye recipe from scratch every time. So it's important to check that it matches and that you're happy with it, and sign off on that sample as well, just like you sign off on all the other kinds of samples.
Right. Now, what if they send you a tiny lab dip, half an inch by half an inch, or something really small? Would you feel comfortable approving color based on that?
It's not ideal. Ideally, you would want a slightly bigger piece to see it, if not for the fact that logistically you also yourself might want to be cutting it up, and making sure different sort of stakeholders in the chain have a reference piece of that. So it's always much better to have a bigger surface area. for that
Right.
reason as well.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Right. Okay, so let's say you get to the point where the manufacturers put together a sample that looks good, seems to be, close, let's say, to the fit you need for the medium size, or the base size, and they get it right for the colors. They send you some swatches, and you say, okay, this together would be nice. What is the next step?
So the next step kind of depends on your needs, really. You could ask for a size set to be made, which is getting some other sizes in your size range made, so you can approve the fit of those other sizes. But you don't necessarily have to do that if you don't want to. If it's a very simple product and you're confident about the way it's been graded, you don't 100% have to. You could also request some salesman samples or photography samples, which is duplicates of your samples if you need those for taking to buying meetings, or if you need those for photo shoots.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what else? And then you get to the pre-production sample, or golden sample, some people call it.
So let's talk about these full size set samples. So if you're making, I don't know, a baseball cap, and it's always the same kind of fabric, always the same kind of workmanship, and let's say it goes into 3 sizes, let's say. If you get the base size confirmed, you might not need them to do also the small size and the large size, right? You might say, well, based on our experience, based on everything we know, that's fine. These numbers, this size chart, this measurement chart here that I prepared is going to be okay, so it's safe. So approving the medium size might be okay. However, if you're going with lingerie and swimwear and things like that, you really want to get a sample of in every one of the sizes. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It really depends on the type of product. So on certain garments, obviously fit is more important, and on others, like your example was perfect, swimwear compared to hats, obviously very different product categories. And it could depend on as well how wide your size range is. So of course, if you're only doing 3 sizes, small, medium and large, that's not that much variance. Whereas if you're doing let's say a US 00 all the way up to a US 24, then that's a really huge size range. So you're definitely going to have more checkpoints within that size range.
Right. So, and as a buyer, you need to be clear about that. You need to have your plan. You need to tell the manufacturer, this is what I'm gonna have to, this is what I need from you. This is what you will have to do before we get to the next step, right? You get to you get to show them what you're doing, basically, and then hold them accountable to follow your process. At what point do you start to, let's say it's a totally new style for a new company? Well, what about the labeling? What about the packing? At what point do you need to have all of that documented and confirmed?
It's a good question. And again, it kind of depends on the company and how they have that process set up and how they usually work with their factory. Bigger companies that work with big factories normally have some, a specific process set up that they use regularly throughout all their products. But if you're a smaller brand and you just have maybe 1 or 2 products, you probably don't have this fixed process set up, with a factory who kind of knows your process. So a lot of our clients fit into that bucket. So we typically for them would create pretty much all of those things at the beginning when we start doing their tech packs for them. Sometimes or often I would say they sort of don't have 100% of the information sort of organized and ready to go and decided on right at the beginning. But because we are starting the tech pack process with them at the beginning, we sort of encourage them to finalize as much as they can at the beginning. And then we put that all in there. Then they work with their factory to create a first sample. And then they come back to us again later if needed. And then we can go back in and add, those extra details that weren't confirmed before, whatever that is, if it's labels or packaging or trims.
Right, absolutely.
It's never quite a one and done process, but we do try to, simplify it as much as possible and reduce the kind of endless back and forth as much as we can.
Right. Yeah, because every time there's a change or there's something that was not clear, then it means, have some new samples made, printed, etc., and sent to us again. And then there's this long approval cycle, which can be, maybe 2 weeks every time. And every time something is not right, you got to go over again, and everybody's getting tired, and the timelines might be pushed back. Also, if you specify things a bit late, well, the manufacturer might say, "Oh, this is going to cost you an extra 10 cents or 30 cents a piece or something," and that might come as a big surprise to the buyer. So, packaging is one of these things where you need to have a plan from the beginning. You might not need to tell them the exact artwork and all the little details, but you need to have to know roughly, is there going to be a hanger? The basic things, right?
Yeah, for sure. You can't expect a factory to, commit to a price if you've not given them the, all the exact specifications.
Right. And then as you get these samples of the product, of the packaging, you have some comments, right? Do you suggest people just write them in an email or in WeChat or something? Or do you suggest that it's all centralized and that people keep track of it, and how?
Yes, absolutely. Keep track of it and add to the tech pack. So keep all comments for each sample in, a clearly labeled section. These comments are for this sample, and then make sure you add that to the tech pack. So like I said in the beginning, the tech pack can be, the one source of truth on where your product is at now for, all of the stakeholders.
Oh, and this is so important, yes, for guiding the supplier to make sure they don't make the same mistakes again, including in repeat orders. So important for the inspectors, because they're going to look at the tech pack, but they're also going to look at the comments, and the comments are so important. They a number of our clients tell us, hey, you get to take photos of the of production to show us that the issues we found and when we wrote the comments are gone. Like, these are checkpoints. You got to double check this and this and that, because if they get it wrong during development, there's always a risk that they get it wrong also in production. So important. And outside of the garment industry, I see very few companies actually do that in a systematic way. But this is one of the beauties of using a tech pack. Yes, there is a place for that. It's very it's systematic. Everybody's used to it. The suppliers are used to it. That's great. Now, coming back to the development process, there is a milestone where the buyer says, "Okay, I'm happy enough here. I'm going to send you maybe 30% of the order, or I'm going to open the letter of credit, or I'm going to trigger the payment process." Usually, what are they waiting for before they trigger that?
Are you referring to the TOP sample?
Or Usually it's a bit earlier than that. So if the fit is not confirmed, at least on the base size, the risk is way too high, right? It's too early. I guess you would agree with me. If the colors also, if some of the colors are not approved, a lot of buyers would also say, well, it's a bit too early. Now, if they say, well, we have, the fit, at least for the base size, is approved, all the main fabrics and everything, is approved, and the color, even if it's just on fabric swatches, all the colors are approved, and probably also the packaging requirements have been communicated, and there's no surprise with the price and everything that's about to come. That's usually when importer would feel confident enough to start, to trigger the payment process. Maybe wire first 20%, typically 30%, right? And this is such an important milestone. If you send the money if you trigger that too early, you're actually skipping the formal approval of the fit, the colors, etc. So, and I see some companies, when they're not experienced, they just skip it. There's a gate here, but we just blew through it and went way too early, because once the payment process has been triggered,
there's no going back.
There's not much to stop the factory from going into mass production, right? To buy the fabric, get it dyed, and to get it delivered, get it cut, and so on. So that's one very important milestone. Now, let's say it's a relatively complex garment, and you want to double confirm all the sizes through samples. So you're going to receive a lot of samples. The fit technician is going to check them, confirm the measurement tables, or adjust them. Okay, there's a point that's another milestone, right, where the buyer will say, all the elements have been confirmed. There's two okay for production. One is, okay, you can get the fabric dyed and purchased and everything. And another one is, go ahead, you can cut and sew, right? Because there's often a way to rework a batch of fabric if necessary to make the color a bit different and so on. But once it's been cut, it's been cut. There's no going back.
Yep.
Right?
No.
You mentioned the top samples, top of production. What exactly does that mean, top of production? This is also another one where different companies may have slightly different meanings, right?
Yeah, so I would describe that as when they take a selection or like a sample off the top of production of however many garments, a percentage, and those would then be checked. And once the quality control has been done, they would, based on the results of that, they would okay that PO for shipment.
Yeah, so these top samples, top of production samples, top of production means very early, like the first ones coming out of mass production, in theory, right? So that would be once the fabric has been dyed, delivered to the cut and sew factory, and then they would hurry up to cut a few first, to cut some fabric first, get it through a sewing line, pack it, and ship it right away. In theory, that's what it would be, right? So that if the buyer gets it and sees something's wrong, it's still early enough for the manufacturer to correct course.
The idea would be that it would be before the bulk of the stuff had been cut and sewn.
Right. Now, have you seen some cases where this is not happening this way? where the manufacturer, just to please the buyer, would say, okay, they want some samples, but we're going to make them in the sample room, right?
Yep.
Yeah, very common in China. Very, very common.
Yeah.
They want some samples. We're going to send them samples. They're not here, so we can do whatever we want, right? We're going to keep it easy for ourselves, and they're going to look good. So they're not going to bother us with production. They're going to feel confident. Let's just do it in the sample room.
Yeah. Which is not great, because very different things can come out of the sample room than will come out of mass production.
Totally. Yes. Okay. So, and then after that, it goes into production, and then the main milestones would be maybe the inspections by the buyer, maybe an inline inspection, a final inspection before shipment. If everything is okay, release the shipping order, get the product shipped out. And I guess most people are familiar with that. But if I really make a summary, because this has been an interesting discussion here, if I'm about to start developing, designing a new kind of garment, what I need to keep in mind is don't work on the basis of samples only, right? Try to document things. And the beauty of it is there is a very structured and very common, very standard approach to that, is putting it all in a tech pack. It's a relatively standard format, right? Then get some samples from the manufacturer, give them feedback, write comments along the way in the tech pack, keep improving the tech pack, adjusting it, work on the packaging. Okay, the main go, no-go gates would be, before I start to send 30% or whatever money you have to send, first, do I feel confident in the fit? Do I feel confident in the colors? This is very, very important. Skipping that, sending money too early can lead to disasters. Actually, I've seen that. You need to instill some discipline so that the manufacturer has to follow your process. Then insist to get some early samples from production. Make sure they don't get made in the sample room if possible. Get a lot of photos. Maybe get a pre-production meeting done at the factory to review the risks, review if everything is clear, review if the fabrics and accessories are in the right color, etc., all as per approved samples and as per the tech pack before they start cutting and sewing, right? This is also an important milestone very often. And then do your inspections during production, and only after that, if everything is fine, let them ship out. Is this a good summary of the whole process?
Yeah, definitely. Process is a great word. It's not just one sample or one tech pack and then you're done. It's kind of a series of revisions and improvements, and then you always make sure that your last pre-production sample is 100% perfect, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, nothing you need to change on it, no improvements needed. And you wait till then, until you sign off on it and start production and pay your deposit.
Right. Absolutely, yes. And and just to summarize again, yes, you need to have a standard in place by the time you send any money, and of course before production starts. And the tech pack is a big element of that. And then to illustrate the tech pack, of course, there are also approved samples. And at the time of mass production, the approved samples might be some of these top samples that have been received by the buyer and approved. But before that, it will be some of the earlier samples, right? They're just here to illustrate the tech pack. They definitely do not replace the tech pack. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely not. Like there just aren't enough copies of the samples for that to be logistically possible. Yeah, not to mention, they don't contain enough information and all the history of the development and the comments and things like that.
Right. Well, this has been so useful. So, Belinda, where where can listeners find out more about what you do? Should they go to your website? So your website is techpacks.co. So tech like technical, techpacks with an S.co. Is this the best place for them to see to see what you do and to see some examples of tech packs and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a blog on the website, so you can read some articles about the topic and tech packs and development. We have, if you go to techpacks.co/examples, you can give us your email address and we'll send you various tech pack examples so you can get a good idea of what those look like and what's included. Yeah, and we have a newsletter as well. If people want to keep in touch with what we're up to and follow our weekly news, they can sign up for that on the website as well.
Right. This is great. All right. Well, Belinda Jacobs, thank you so much. This has been a great discussion. Thanks to the listeners also. And I should also comment on something. From time to time, I tell the listeners the same thing. If you like the show, go into Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or whatever application you use and give us 5-star, give us a little comment. It's great for us to keep the motivation up and to keep producing this podcast with no advertisement. Every week we've been doing it every week for about 2 years now. So thanks a lot.
Wow.
Thanks again, Belinda.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share because it will really help others discover us too.